So yeah, let's just do it. I'm talking about it, so we're just gonna do it. Afterwards, we'll meditate and we'll do our gratitude and some other fun stuff if we've got the time. How's that sound? Great, I'm so glad you're on board. So glad. You guys make me happy. Did you know that? Oh, I have a ridiculously... So I've been playing around with finally getting a donation button. It's gigantic. Below. It's terrible. It's like the big PayPal images, because that's what we're using. Know that will get better. I just kind of like had to start streaming while I was messing with it. It works, I believe, but it looks so bad. It looks so bad. But yeah, just in case you didn't know where to donate, there it is. But I had fun creating more alerts, so yeah, that's kind of why I'm mentioning it. All right. Nothing to celebrate. There's nothing in the celebration power-up, so I'm assuming that means all of you guys have very, very sad lives with nothing good going on. Which can't be true. Can't be true. So if you've got something good, you want me to shout it out, click on that celebration power-up down below and let me know. Meow to you, Upright Oracle! Hello, kitty cat. How's it going? We're just about to talk about our inner critics. Our goblins. Deedlies. I'm happy you're here, Upright. Yes, I am. Yes, I am. Mwah. So, yeah, I was joking about people in the world not having a trash talker in their own brain, like an inner critic. And I don't know anybody that fits, right? We all have it. I think we all have it. And if we don't, it's because we've had like a lobotomy or something. Dude. Hi, Super Sea Lion. Welcome, SS. Hi. Dur, I'm glad you're here. You know, and technically you could do both. You could be playing a game and being here. I won't tell. Goblin conquering. I love that. I want a little animation of that. Oh, nice to see you, SS. Hello. Okay, so yeah, we all have our inner trash talker, our little goblins, as I like to call them. And that voice that's in our head is there to basically just make us play small and live small. And I really do think, oh my God, I really do think that framing it like they're monsters is really appropriate, because it's like, instead of poison or claws or slime or like lashy tails and sharp teeth, these monsters are attacking with thoughts. And here's the tricky thing, is that their negative thinking masquerades as truth in our heads. So they're very, very powerful. So I looked up, like, I was like, oh, a goblin. What is a goblin? Like, I was like, I like it being a goblin, but why do I like it being a goblin? So I looked it up, and European folklore states, and I quote from somewhere, you'll never know where I got this, that a goblin is a mischievous and usually very unpleasant, vengeful, and greedy creature whose primary purpose is to cause trouble to mankind. That sounds pretty much like my inner trash talker. So I thought that was very appropriate. So of course, you guys, there are obviously critics outside of ourselves too. Those are those mean people who, not the mean people, the people who are behaving in a mean manner, who, you know, like to say things that tear us down. And yeah, so we have critics all around us and all inside us. Oh, I have videos today that I want to share. So the first one is, because I have to do it every single time I can, a video from Brene Brown. And it's like 5 minutes, and I chose it because she's just got such a like clear way of talking about hold on. Yeah, so she just has a really clear way of of talking about about the qualities of your inner goblin and your like outer goblins, so to speak.
And so my story is that
I need to turn it up.
And I never thought I would have a big public career. And so I did a TED Talk that went very viral.
Yay,
and
video!
in the wake of that, I was kind of everywhere for a couple of months on every CNN.com, NPR. It was everywhere, and something I wasn't used to. And the marching orders from my therapist and my husband were, do not read the comments online. So I read all the comments online. And so one morning, I woke up and there were 2 or 3 new articles out, and I started reading the comments. And they were devastating. They weren't about my work, they were about me. They were super personal. And they were the things that creative people play in their mind and then give up doing what they really want to do. Like if I asked every single one of you, what would you try if you knew people would never say this about you? What would this be? Those were the comments that morning. Of course she embraces imperfection. What choice does she have? Look how she looks.
Yikes.
I feel sorry for her kids. Less research, more Botox. Just mean personal attacks, the things that really, up until that moment, had inspired me to stay very small in my life and my career, just so I could avoid those things. So that morning, Steve and the kids leave. I stay home. I get on the couch, and I watch 8 hours of Downton Abbey. And when it's over, I don't want to turn off Downton Abbey. Because the minute you turn off Downton Abbey, then it's like soccer practice and dinner and back to the mean people, and maybe, should I get Botox? And maybe if I stand still when I talk. So I get out my laptop and I do a search for who was president in the United States during the Downton Abbey era. Have you ever done that? Like you're numbing with TV or a movie, and so when it's over, you just like stay in that space by like learning more about the actors and what's going on. I've been doing this long enough to know this is like, you're laughing with me, not at me. So I put it in, and Theodore Roosevelt comes up, and a quote comes up. And I read it, and this is what it says. It's a quote from a speech that he gave in the early 1900s at the Sorbonne, and a lot of people call it the Man in the Arena speech, and this is the passage that changes my life. It's not the critic who counts. It's not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done it better. The credit belongs to the person who's actually in the arena, whose face is marred with blood and sweat and dust, who, at the best, in the end, knows the triumph of high achievement, and who, at worst, if he fails daring greatly. So the moment that I read that, I closed my laptop, and this is what shifted in me. 3 huge things. First, I spent the last 12 years studying vulnerability, and that quote was everything I know about vulnerability. It is not about winning, it's not about losing, it's about showing up and being seen. The second thing, this is who I want to be. I want to create. I want to make things that didn't exist before I touched them. I want to show up and be seen in my work and in my life. And if you're going to show up and be seen, there is only one guarantee, and that is you will get your ass kicked. That is the guarantee. That's the only certainty you have. If you're going to go in the arena and spend any time in there whatsoever, especially if you've committed to creating in your life, you will get your ass kicked. So you have to decide at that moment, I think for all of us, if courage is a value that we hold, this is a consequence. You can't avoid it.
Yep.
The third thing, which really set me free, and I think Steve, my husband, would argue has made me somewhat dangerous, is kind of a new philosophy about criticism, which is this. If you're not in the arena also getting your ass kicked, I'm not interested in your feedback. Period. That's it. If you have constructive information, feedback to give me, I want it. And I'm an academic. I'm hardwired for wrestling around with stuff like that. If you say, hey, you forgot all this literature, or hey, you should have done this, or terrible sentence construction over here. Like, let's do it. I love that. But if you're in the cheap seats, not putting yourself on the line, and just talking about how I could do it better, I'm in no way interested in your feedback.
Yes. Yes, people. Yes. I love her so much. For so many reasons. There was so much in there. So much in there that, like, right? She would be in Gryffindor, right? I think we all would be in Gryffindor. But whatever. We have a lot of those houses in us. We have all of them in us. Isn't that the point? So that's kind of interesting, Dare, because I think from time to time, like, we all are in the cheap seats. I don't think we can always be outside our comfort zone, pushing ourselves. I think we need downtime, and sometimes, like, when I feel, and I'm, like, not saying at all that, like, this is what you're saying, but sometimes when I feel really stuck, where I feel like I'm playing it too safe for too long, like, that's when I get, like, really negative. That triggers all of my destructive thinking. When I am often surprised that time actually was necessary. Like, I wasn't aware of it at the time, but something was going on, like, internally, subconsciously, to prepare me for my next, like, big adventure that I had no idea about. And I spent all that time beating myself up for it. So yeah, we're like, sometimes we're in the arena, sometimes we're in the cheap seats. It's this never-ending dance, right? Of getting uncomfortable and then retreating to comfort and then getting uncomfortable again. Yeah, it's one of the reasons why I come back time and time again to Joseph Campbell's hero's journey, because it's a circular journey. I don't know, I can't really see myself anymore. It's a circular journey in that you start off at home in your safe zone, right? Your comfort zone. This is often the hero living on the farm at the start of a fantasy movie before the inciting incident, right? And eventually, you start hearing this call to adventure. Sometimes it's Gandalf showing up at your door. Sometimes, like us in the real world, it's this longing that we start to have. This, like, nudge from our inner voice to say, that's what you really care about, go do it. And then we spend all this time fighting it and resisting that call to adventure. And sometimes, this is absolutely when our goblins show up in massive force. And really, from what Brene Brown said, I think troll is just as good, maybe the better monster to choose, because we have external trolls and we definitely have internal trolls. And Upright, you brought troll up, and that's what made me think of it. So we have this, like, troll or goblin or whatever inside our brain saying, like, oh, no, don't you dare go on that adventure. You're gonna fail. You're not enough. You don't have what it takes. Like, you're a loser, right? Whatever it has to throw at you to keep you in your comfort zone, it's gonna throw at you. And it's really easy to listen to that. When we manage to get past it, that's when we, like, get to this part on the adventure. We're stepping across the threshold into the unknown. That's when the hero leaves the farm. And then the chaos happens because we're in the fog of war, right? Where we don't know what's going to happen. It's in our discomfort zone, but along the way we meet amazing, crazy, companions. We, ultimately have to change and grow, so we get a gift in return, and then we ultimately, on a hero's journey, get what we were seeking, and then we ultimately, here's the kick, like, we bring it back home. And so we come back a little bit stronger, a little bit more heroic, and we bring whatever it is we've created or we've found back to our home, and we make the world a better place. And but then we're back at home. We're back in our comfort zone, right? So it's a cyclical thing. Hi, Mrs. Scott. So I just think, yeah, sometimes we're in the cheap seats, and that's okay. And sometimes we're on our adventure, and that's okay. I personally just don't want to live my life in the cheap seats all the time. You know? I just don't. I think we miss out on living fully when we do that. But yeah. Oh, that was a tangent. I like it. Mrs. Scott sending us all kinds of heart love. Heart love. Makes me happy. Okay, guys. So, Brene Brown's right. Our goblins are real. And we have inner goblins and we have outer goblins. And I particularly loved when she said that when we start to show up authentically and we're really pursuing what we care about, like we're living on purpose, we will get our asses kicked. I wish it wasn't true. It is. We will. But like the man in the arena, we too will be living a heroic life, and that life is often full of meaning. So yeah, I'm laughing because I'm like, wow, I'm encouraging people to go get their asses kicked, right? But know that we're here. And that's one of the reasons why I started streaming on Twitch was I wanted to like create a safe place, like a welcoming community to come back and land when I've gotten my ass kicked, pursuing what I care about, and that other people could do the same. I don't know if I've shared this much with you guys, but my background, like a lot of you know I was like an actress for 14 years, and the reason why I stopped that is I became a founder of a company that ended up like ending in tragedy with the loss of my father-in-law to suicide. And that like was getting my ass kicked in the arena on my hero's journey. And I was very understandably devastated. And I was like, dude, I've lived my life boldly, right? Like it's supposed to work. Like I don't understand. I'm following my dream. I'm doing these things. But the truth is like you still get your ass kicked. And if you don't have like a community to be around you when those things happen, when you're feeling like immense shame because somebody really trolled you hard or whatever, our resilience goes down. So anyways, another segue. That's why I do what I do. So you guys all know by now, right, that our thoughts create our emotions, which create our actions. So this is how our goblins work, because they are our most powerfully negative thoughts. They're often behind some of our most unpleasant emotions and our most destructive choices. They really turn our self-esteem into mush. And like they convince us to feel shame and to always doubt whether or not we're worthy of love and belonging or that we're good enough. In fact, they are the voice in our head that's telling us we're not worthy, that we're not good enough. So if you guys are up for it, there is an amazing video TED Talk that I want to share, but it's 15 minutes long. So I'll give you guys a chance real quick to say no to that. I chose it because it's by this guy named Steve Chapman, and I chose it because like he does such a good way. He has such a powerful talk on what our goblin looks like and how it functions in us, how it's like universal to all of us, what it does to us, the consequences of it. Like he just encapsulates the whole thing in a very powerful way. All right, I'm doing it. All right, oops, but I have to, of course, pause the musica. All right, guys. Yeah, so quantity, I will definitely talk about what we can do about them for sure in a little bit. I will not leave today without giving you some basic tools, for sure. And I'm pretty sure Steve Chapman here mentioned some stuff.
I'm terribly sorry to interrupt your day, but I feel the need to warn you about the next speaker, who doesn't deserve to be here. I can only assume the organizers made a clerical error and thought they were booking a different Steve Chapman. one with intellect and wisdom, a true thought leader. This Steve Chapman is a compliant enough human being, but is punching way above his weight by even considering walking onto this stage. I have been telling him for many years that he has ideas way above his station that are only going to lead to his spectacular public humiliation. I fear that moment is about to come, and I will take no pleasure in telling him, I told you so. I can only apologize on his behalf and suggest you use the next short while to check your emails until the next proper speaker arrives. Meet my inner critic. That whisper in my ear who constantly reminds me that I'm not good enough, that my creativity is bad, that I should play it safe and not take risks, not try anything new because I'll probably make a fool of myself. He's a familiar character, someone that's been there my whole life, but someone I took a particular interest in a few years ago. In September 2012, I spent a week training with a guru named Keith. Keith was and still is a hero of mine, and I took the opportunity of meeting him for the first time to let him know I was writing a book about creativity, inspired by his work. Keith was incredibly enthusiastic, and buoyed by his encouragement, I set off to continue working on the project. A year later, September 2013, I was once again with Keith. I gave him an update, told him some of the chapter headings, the fact that my 6-year-old daughter was illustrating it. That sounds really interesting. I'd love a copy when it's done, said Keith. So a year later, after 3 years' hard work, I was once again with Keith, September 2014. I presented him with a copy of the published book that I'd signed to thank him for his influence. Keith accepted it with gratitude and placed it carefully in his bag. A few days later, he approached me during a break and said, I'd like to buy you a coffee after class. Wow, I thought, a one-to-one audience with my hero. Then that voice started whispering in my ear. He's going to tell you it's the worst book he's ever read and you're a total failure. I told a friend about my concerns and she reassured me, of course Keith was going to love it. It was a book that was based on a master's dissertation that got exceptional marks. So as we sat in the rather blandly decorated bar of Keith's hotel, I started to smile inside. Maybe he was going to like it. Maybe this was going to be the moment that I proved to my inner critic that I was good enough. Keith looked at me and grimaced slightly and then said, about this book, I think you should withdraw it from sale. Tell everyone you've made a mistake. Get some help and start again. I think this book will damage your business. The world felt like it stopped spinning for a moment. Everything apart from Keith's face went out of focus. My chest tightened, my cheeks flushed, my heart felt like it was going at 1,000 miles an hour.
3 years worth of work.
Keith carried on talking, but I couldn't hear him. I had a one-to-one audience with my hero, and all I wanted to do was run away, hide, and never have a creative thought again. In that moment, my inner critic felt like it had quadrupled in size, had me in the palm of its hand and was slowly crushing me with his powerful grip, telling me with venom and malice, I told you so. The inner critic, or superego as Freud called it, is our idealized sense of self, an unattainable, imagined perfect version of us that never fails at everything and receives the adoration for other human beings for being a master at literally everything. It manifests in us day to day as a self-doubt that causes us to distrust our intuition and our instincts. A voice whose constant narrative of comparison and judgment stifles spontaneity and creativity, replacing it with self-doubt and shame. Now, for someone else, that afternoon with Keith may have been inconsequential. Just one person's opinion that was, after all, coming from a genuinely well-intentioned place. But for me, it was the perfect storm for my inner critic. It ticked all of his boxes, it pressed all of his buttons. And in that moment, he stole my hero's words to use as compelling evidence that he was right all along, and that I wasn't good enough. It took me a while to recover from that day, but when I did, I had even more of a renewed interest in this character. So I decided to start an MI5-style investigation into him. A covert inquiry where I gather evidence on this shady creature. Where he hung out, what did he like to do? Where did he train? What did he look like? Like a police artist sketching a witness impression of a suspect, I started to draw him, which yielded some fascinating results. Some of the early pictures were of a professorial type chap who would just look at me and shake his head and tut at everything I did. But over time, he evolved into an equally disapproving, sinister Zen monk-style character. Both men, both older than me, and both possessing more academic or spiritual wisdom than I thought I could ever attain. But the really interesting thing was, the more I drew him, the more detail I added, the more he evolved and morphed. Like a mythical shapeshifter that realizes it's been spotted and now desperately trying to avoid capture. And it was in that moment I thought, I'm onto him. The dance has begun. I continued to dig dirt on this character. On a visit to my parents' house, I excavated some old school reports from the loft, and on reading them had a simultaneous sense of anger and excitement. As somebody that now knows I suffered from dyslexia and self-doubt at school, the anger arose from repeated descriptions of a young boy who would not achieve anything because he simply didn't try hard enough or make enough effort. But the excitement arose from a realization that the words in these dusty old documents were almost verbatim what my inner critic tortured me with on a regular basis. It was like I'd found one of his secret training manuals, one of his sacred parchments. I decided I needed to confront him about all of this, so I made a puppet of him, which would enable me to have an adult-to-adult conversation with him. And in doing so, I realized that if I stripped back his dramatic playground-style exaggerations, there really wasn't much substance to what he said. In fact, it seemed he was the fraud, he was the charlatan, he was the imposter. I was becoming quite obsessed with all of this, so I started to tell other people about him and was surprised to learn that they too had their own inner critics. So I encouraged them to start drawing them, resulting in a beautifully bizarre online gallery of inner critic artist impressions. Some of them were very similar in terms of appearance and apparent origin stories. Many were different and diverse and unique. Some were bizarre and surreal and scary.
Oh.
But for all of the diversity of their appearance, no matter where I went, they all seemed to have variations of the same basic message that they just repeated over and over again. You are not good enough, and you are incapable of becoming good enough. A horribly twisted psychological knot that's difficult to escape from. But it seemed I'd found the answer. My inner critic had been suspiciously quiet since I started my investigation, so I assumed all I needed to do was to carry on, and then he'd give up for good. Then one morning I received an email. I'd been nominated to do a high-profile talk on creativity. I was really excited at the prospect of taking my work to a global audience. I was hoping the email was going to be my invitation to speak. But when I read it, my heart sank. The quality of speakers this year has been exceptional, and we will not be inviting you to speak on this occasion. I felt the beast rising on my shoulder, his form more hideous and misshapen than he had been previously. He didn't speak because he needed no words. I could tell what he was telling me in every fibre of my body. And in that moment, I realized that this is a game without end, an ongoing game of cat and mouse, like a slightly more psychologically disturbing version of Tom and Jerry. For every one of his wily schemes to get me, I would come up with an equally cunning creative response to lure him out into the light. I've been working with masks for a number of years and knew they were a potent way of getting in touch with the dark recesses of our personality. So I made a mask of him so I could literally stand in his shoes, walk, talk, think and feel like him. I enrolled in the Hoffman process, an incredibly intensive 7-day psychological retreat where I learnt about some of the origins of his power and authority, the early parental influences, the words of teachers and other authority figures that I'd swallowed whole as true descriptions of who I was and who I had the potential to become. Through Alexander technique lessons, I learnt the effect he had on me physically, and as a tall man, why I always made myself smaller, because he'd tell me to stand up straight, tall and centered, is arrogant, and setting myself up for failure. And using a surprisingly simple art therapy technique, I discovered that alcohol was one of his secret weapons. In his most vicious moments, he'd say, "Come and have a drink, that will quieten me." And the moment I did, he'd say, "Why are you drinking? You should be ashamed."
Oh, that's so true.
And right now, he's telling me that for this talk, on this stage, to be any good, I should be telling you that I defeated him, I slayed him. And I should be telling you that you too can just follow my 3 simple steps to inner bliss. But that simply isn't true. The dance continues, and I suspect it always will. But an acceptance that this is just part of being a self-aware, self-regulating, fully functional, creative human being has been the most liberating thing. Influential Gestalt psychologist called Arnie Beiser suggested that human change is paradoxical, and that we get more change by becoming more deeply aware of who we are, rather than striving to be something we're not. It seems our stuckness when working with the inner critic arises from our default response to try and fight it or prove it wrong, which just results in us trying to improve, which plays into its hands, and it's not already good enough driver.
Oh, that's so brilliant.
The biggest thing that I've discovered from this inquiry over the last 3 or 4 years is that the practice of bearing witness is the most potent thing. A deeper awareness and acceptance of what is, without judgment. To learn to dance with the inner critic, rather than to fight it. The eminent Zen writer Thich Nhat Hanh suggests that if we have an energy within us that we wish to transform, we need to take care of it, rather than to battle with it, or else it will destroy us. I like to call this practice taking care of my demons. I see you, my little inner critic. I know you're well-intentioned. I'm here for you now. And in doing all of this, I've developed a relationship with him. He's now more of an annoyance than an authority, like an irritating flatmate that you learn to live with because they pay the rent. I've even developed an empathy for the poor thing, whose role early in life was to keep me safe and maintain those important early relational connections. But the most exciting thing has been that as the inner critic despises creativity, get him to know him in more and more imperfect creative ways really messes with his mind. Ironically, my creative nemesis has become my creative muse and source of inspiration. I've come to believe that creativity is simply our human capacity to experience and express difference in service of change and transformation. So imagine the potential in the room if each of us was able to fully liberate our creative hope and ambition. And at the same time, imagine the power that our collective inner critics would have to stifle all of that if we continue to let them operate underground like some United Nations of Bond villains. We cannot bring forth our fully flawed but willing human selves in an atmosphere of self-judgment and comparison. But we can use any number of creative, playful, and experimental means to lure these creatures out of the shadows and into the light, where we can get a good look at them and see them for what they are, and maybe reclaim some of their power for ourselves. Thank you.
I just what if he had listened and didn't do that TED Talk, right? Listened to his inner critic, his goblin, and just didn't show up. That's crazy, because there's so much in there that I benefit from. I'm sorry, it's probably really loud. It's good, right? It is really, there's just every single thing he said, I was like, yes, that's exactly what happens to me. No, it's interrupt away, soul gazer. Interrupt away. All right, switch it back. There was just, I don't even know, wow. So yes, in a way, our goblins are this curse. Because they can be super powerful. And the more we're unaware of them, the more powerful they are. They just, run rampant in our heads and kind of we're like zombies just moving forward based off of their beliefs, because we think that they're true and we don't ever have the awareness to interrupt that process and challenge it. So they can be this terrible, terrible destructive power, this curse that we have. And yeah, they want to keep us weak. They want to make us play small, stay safe. When we listen to them, there isn't a hero's journey for us. And if we do manage to say yes to a journey, yeah, exactly, Quanetly, that is so well said. Yeah, they want to, they feed off of us, right? So if they lose us, they die in a way, right? So yeah, they want to keep us from themselves. And if you do go on a hero's journey, they're that voice that's always saying, dude, you should go back. This is crazy. Yes, that is it. It's that super ego he talked about that is, the enemy of enlightenment. That, like, and I'll get into this a little bit, like, our goblins can't survive in the light. They can't survive when our awareness is shining on them. They just can't. So they fight so hard to keep us in the dark, to keep us bamboozled. I love that word. Yeah. And he touched on a little bit where they come from, and they do seem to come from our childhood. That it's actually a really messed up protective mechanism. And essentially what happens is at some point we step outside the safety of our nest and we're met with, yeah, there's that word. We're met with some sort of emotional disaster. So, he talked about his teachers or parental, like adult figures giving him messages that he's not good enough. And that's absolutely like one of the creators of our goblin, because when we feel like we're not good enough, we often feel shame. And I think that the shameful emotion is so painful that when we start to feel it for the first time as a kid, our brain creates the goblin to protect us from ever having to feel shame again. So sometimes it's someone saying, gosh, you're stupid. Like you're never going to be good at math, right? It could be your fly was down during an assembly, or you peed your pants in front of people, or this is going to sound so stupid, but this was a real one for my life. You're the girl who moved to a new town, bought a amazing shiny pair of maroon boots, and then everybody hated you for your boot choice. Like, you were told you weren't enough because you had bad fashion taste, right? Like, I felt so much shame from that, which is so stupid looking back. And yeah, that creates this thing in us that wants to keep, kids are the worst. They are. No, Mrs. Scott. Yes, you did. You were definitely part of the people who created it. But to be fair, I probably had it well before the boot moment, and the boot moment just kept, reinforcing it. I was kind of hoping you wouldn't be here today, Mrs. Scott, when I said that. So yeah, like, our goblins are born out of our shame. Isn't that crazy, Soul Gazer? Like, it sounds like you were basically told, like, this is the thing. Like, people make fixed comments about who we are, as if our goodness or our badness doesn't change, right? Like, as we grow and change, or that our intelligence is somehow fixed and we can never get better at math if we applied ourselves, right? Like, we get all of these messages about how we're never going to be enough because whatever they're measuring us on, they perceive as fixed. Like, it's a talent and not something we can grow. It's just, it's so crazy and bamboozling. Yeah. And that we all have it. Like, even the people, like, I have been so guilty of doing it to people, right? Like, I think about all the times I gave a message to my brother growing up that he wasn't enough for all kinds of reasons. So it's like, it's when, like, it's like when we're unaware of this happening in our own brains and why it happens, and that ultimately it's some sort of message about you're not good enough and you're never going to be good enough. Like, we can't not do it to people too. Like, we can't also somehow not be part of the problem. I think in order to start changing the power dynamic in our own brain, that's what allows us to finally be able to treat other people better as well. Awareness, guys. That's why we meditate. Okay, so what can we do about these trash talkers? They are only thoughts. As powerful as they are still only thoughts. So that means they're not actually facts. There's no universal truth that they're telling you. It is total BS when you get the message in whatever form it comes to you that somehow you're not good enough and you'll never be good enough. There's just no truth in that. So ultimately, they don't hold any power except what we give them. I mentioned, like, when we're unaware of them, they are running control of our emotions, for sure. Like, we're these zombies, we're on autopilot. They're incredibly powerful because they're fully in the dark. And as soon as we do shine our awareness onto them, they, like, their power just starts to melt away. So I'm sad I switched off of the internet because I have one more video, guys. It's super short. Don't you worry. Okay, guys. This is the way I think our goblins, this is a metaphor for what our goblins are like when we're unaware of them and what they do to us.
Really appreciate it. I think the healing has begun. Met the greatest earthquake ever known. High on the rapids, it struck their tiny raft. That's good. And plunged them down. I'm so tired. 1,000 feet below. I'm feeling weak. Really bushwhacked. Here's how we end it. A little arpeggio, nothing fancy. I got sleepy. Land. Land of the lost. I'm so tired.
Oh, that makes me so happy every time I see that. Right? It's so spot on. Yeah, seriously. That's what's happening to us every day. We're not aware of the crap we're saying to ourselves. Thank you guys for indulging me in that. That's when I'm really, like, needing a laugh, I just imagine that scene, and for whatever reason, that's, like, for me, the funniest moment ever in all of cinema. So, I don't know why. So, okay, what can we do about this other than just being more aware? So, obviously, like, meditation, over time does increase our awareness of our thoughts. Oh, Dare, it's seriously the best. I need it too, so bad. So bad. And laughter is contagious. So, we can, and I'll get into this a little bit. Actually, I'm going to do it right now. So, because Steve Chapman, in his TED Talk, recommended befriending our goblin, right? And that's because it isn't going away. It isn't ever going away. Remember, it is a protective mechanism in our brains. It's not a good one, right? It causes us a lot of pain, but it is there, and it's not something we can beat or destroy. So as challenging as it is, we're better off. We'll have more well-being around this the more we're able to befriend them. So going back to Labyrinth, which is one of my favorite movies as a kid, and even as adult, because I watch it probably every... Yay! Soul Gazer! That's so lovely of you! Mwah, thank you! That's the other favorite movie of mine. Goonies. So at the end of the movie, there she is, back in her bedroom. Classic hero's journey, right? She left her safe bedroom to go to the world of the Goblin King, rescue her brother. She comes back, and she's, like, sitting at her little dresser with a mirror, and all of a sudden she's missing her companions that she met on the trip, on the journey. And they pop up behind her, right? And they say, like, should you need us, we're always going to be here. Oh, and it looks kind of like that. And they have a big old dance party. And I just thought, I was so moved by that as a kid, and I never understood why. But I think part of, I don't even think I can explain why it still moves me, except to say that part of the gift of growing and going on adventures and answering our dreams, right? Our whatever it is that we want to create in the world or do in the world, is that we do meet people along the way. Like, I'm meeting you guys because I'm, daring to stream, right? And I mean, it's like, you don't want to lose that. You don't want to lose that. But I was always super confused by the fact that in that dance party are these guys. Are those guys, the evil ones. Like, it's not just her friends. It's also the, like, creepy ones, the ones that, like, tried to, like, kill her, right? Like, the monsters are there too. And I thought that was really powerful because essentially she's befriending all of them and accepting all of them as a part of herself, as a necessary part of herself that she can't defeat. So that's why I wanted to share this with you, because it made that make more sense to me. Like, maybe how we could befriend them or why we would befriend them. I got a little bit more bought into the idea of it by watching it. So besides that, besides simply changing your, like, frame of reference for how you think of this goblin from an enemy to a friend who, by the way, just doesn't know how to love you very well, right? Yes, Quantity. That is, yes. Befriend them because David Bowie is their king. Absolutely. Yeah, like, we might as well, like, they're our lifelong companion. We might as well make the best of it. And they really are, like, well-intentioned friends that don't know how to love us well or how to support us well. They're like overprotective parents who are trying to keep us safe, but in all the wrong ways. If this still isn't enough to kind of help you let go of any, like, anger, judgment, or resentment you feel towards your own inner critic, you could do a gratitude practice around them, which I know sounds kind of strange. But if you think about it, if their purpose is to protect you, that's something to appreciate, maybe. And so I have a name for my gremlin, my goblin, his name is Bob. And so when I'm aware that he's doing his thing, his nastiness in my head, before streaming, I'll be like, I'll tell myself, wow, what you prepare for today is terrible. Like, they're not going to like it. Nobody cares about this stuff except for you. You're never going to get any better at doing this. You might as well give up. Like, I say these things to myself, right? Some version of this. So what can help is if I'm like, you know what, Bob? Thank you for reminding me how important this is to me, because I know you wouldn't be here unless I really cared about this. Because they don't show up for things that don't matter, you guys. So I just say that, and I'm like, so thanks for reminding me how much I care about this. You're making it more likely that I can take action today. So thank you. So I just use my goblin as a way to like have a huge, shut up, Bob. Like a huge red flag that something matters to me, right? Because if it's kind of like with anger, like the beautiful thing about anger, is that it tells you when something went down that's violating something incredibly important to you. So if you never had anger, you might never become aware of what matters. Similar with a goblin. Oh, you did? Any helpful tips, Dare? So yeah, besides befriending, I've been trying to get to this for a little bit and I keep going back to befriending, I'm sorry. Is you can personalize your goblin, which is really what we've been doing this whole time by saying it's a freaking goblin, right? So you can name it like I did. You do want to give it the name of someone, oh, interesting, Dare, yeah. Yeah, so I like that because it also just helps us be more aware of which emotion we're feeling. And like, yeah, there's this, again, it's like, unless you shine a light on what's going on in here, it has control of you. So simply going, oh, hi there, sadness. I see you, I acknowledge you. It starts to lose its power. Right? It's totally true. It's totally true. Yes. And not acknowledging our emotions makes them stickier. Because otherwise, like, emotions, like, at least when I'm meditating, I experience that emotions rise and they fall, and then they'll rise again and they'll fall, and then they'll, like a wave pattern. But when I try to deny the emotion, it's just like constantly causing pressure, like it's gonna erupt at some point. And so you're like creating a volcano instead of surfing on the waves. Yeah, same thing with the goblin, right? Because they're thoughts creating our emotions. So acknowledging it matters. So yeah, you can name it. And it's better, like I was saying, it's better to name it something that isn't going to remind you of somebody you know. You want your goblin to be its own independent person. The whole point of personalizing it is to disassociate it from yourself. Because right now our inner critic feels like us. And that means it has more control. But the more we can like take it instead of it, set it out and just acknowledge it as its own thing, the less power it has. And naming it is a silly but quite effective way to start doing that. Likewise, like Steve Chapman did, you could do an art project. You could draw it, like create a monster shape for it. Maybe it's a troll for you. It doesn't have to be a goblin, right? Like maybe it's whatever. Like maybe it's his sage spiritual monk with like 4 eyes, right? But if you draw it or create it somehow, you know what, Upright? Of course. do whatever feels good to you, and you can change it, right? Like, this is so tricky. If, and I'm not saying you do, but if you're thinking, oh, I've got to do this right, I've got to name it correctly, I've got to visualize it correctly, your gremlin is already won, right? Like that goblin is like, got you, because it's talking about perfection, which is a very strong tool of telling you basically you're not going to be good enough, so don't even try, right? So yeah, do whatever you want, and feel free to change it up. Maybe you can make a mask like he did, whatever, or, just whatever. So here's the part that I like to geek out on, because goblins, gremlins, whatevers, these things talk in I statements. So you hear things like, I suck. Like, oh, there I go again. I failed because I'm stupid. Like, I don't deserve blah, blah, blah. Or they're not going to like me because I'm ugly, right? Like, they're all I statements. And that's super personal. It's like we're instantly identifying with it. There's no separation, right? So just the power is already built in. We accept I statements. The likelihood that we accept an I statement as truth is much, much higher than like a you statement. So what you want to do when you can catch your thoughts and and you think it's this like inner critic, switch the thoughts around to a you. Yes. Like switching it to a you suck, or you're stupid, you're not good enough, nobody's gonna like you because you're ugly. Here's the thing about that. Like, you can see how it's like putting it back outside yourself, right? Like you're listening to someone say this to you instead of you saying it to yourself. And it makes that, when it's disassociated from you, it's easier to challenge, and it triggers your fight response, right? Like it's gonna start triggering your anger, maybe your frustration. Like, we normally don't take it when someone comes to our face and says like, you suck, right? Like that affects us, and it makes us want to we may not fight back, but it makes us want to do something about it. And we want to use that to our benefit here. So, for example, if I wanted to write a book and my goblin is saying like, oh, I can't write a book, I have nothing worth saying, I have nothing new to add that hasn't already been said before. I can change that, right, to, oh, you shouldn't write a book. You have nothing worth saying. You're not going to add anything that hasn't been said before, right? And so it's not fully a fix, but it is helping shift it. And then what you want to do is just challenge that thought, challenge the validity. So the thing about our goblins is they are, vast majority of the time, unrealistically negative. They blow the danger or the risk so out of proportion. And we really can lessen the power of their belief by challenging how realistic it is and offering up more realistic thoughts in their place. So for example, you shouldn't write a book. You have nothing worth saying could become, okay, so my book probably won't change the world, but it will change someone's life, or it will make somebody's life better, and that's enough for me. Another one could be, so there's no right or wrong, right? It's what makes it feel more realistic to you. So another one could be like, okay, well, writing is an adventure worth taking, regardless of how good or bad the final book is. I still want to do it. So I hope that's helpful. Like for me, like, so once we have the awareness that we're trash talking ourselves and we're like, okay, I'm going to befriend you because I understand you're trying to protect me from feeling shame, and shame is awful to feel. I get that. Thank you for trying to take care of me, and I don't need you, right? So you have that. You have changing the statement from an I to a you, and then challenging how realistic it is, and coming up with statements that are more realistic. You can further, take away its power by naming it, personifying it in the form of some sort of monster or whatever helps you befriend it. But the magic piece in here that I really don't have a great solution for is the awareness, which is where this all starts. Because awareness is something we build over time. And yeah, I wish like Steve Chapman, it's like, I wish I could say like, here's the solution. Like, boom, it's magical, you're done. And it's just not like that. It is this cat and mouse game that we're always going to be playing with our inner critic. And like Brene Brown in her video is saying, our outer critics, the trolls that are out there, are going to trigger our internal critics. So even if we're like protecting ourselves, we're still going to get exposed all the time to our own critic, one way or another. So yeah, guys, I guess, it's just, I'm a little bit, I wish I could just like wave a magic wand and we'd all have complete awareness of this, because then it would have no power over us. But I think now that we've talked about it, we can continue talking about it. So if, you want to bring something to chat one day about like your critic and how it got triggered or whatever, that would be a huge gift to all of us. Right? Because it's going to help us all remember and keep aware of this process. And maybe I can come up with some sort of power up that we could do on a regular basis around this. That could help further keep it front of mind. But yeah, so this is unfinished, I guess is what I'm saying. It feels unfinished to me. But I hope you guys found it of value today, regardless. I did in particular because around the comments you guys had about how you could relate to this and how we're all like this. Because that helped me, like, I knew that, but it helped me, like, trust what I knew, which I wasn't doing so much before. Okay, any questions? If not, we'll go ahead. Oops, I'm doing this over and over again. We'll go ahead and do our meditation. Yes. Oh, I like that. To be continued. Thanks, SS. Yes. To be continued. And if you guys have any ideas for how you would want to continue working on our negative self-talk, let me know. Or even if this is something you want to continue working on, right? Because I'll keep applying my creativity. I know, the dance pate. Okay, well, while I'm giving people a chance to ask any remaining questions, let's just do our gratitude practice. So feel free to add this into chat if you want to. Of course, you don't have to. Okay, quietly. Awesome. We'll keep it coming. And it's really related to the stream we did on self-esteem too. So I think my brain's gonna somehow combine this and do like a regular power-up we can do or something. Hi, Dare. Welcome back. We're just about to do our gratitude practice. So, first question, guys. What was the best thing that happened to you yesterday? Yesterday was Monday, so I know that can be a day where not a lot feels like it's going well. But what was the best thing that happened to you? Oh. I got to spend like an hour and a half outside, and that was glorious. That was really good for me. So guys, the reason why we do gratitude is to boost our positive emotions. Ooh, a headboard. Look at you all grown up, upright. You're a fancy adult now. Love it. Hey, I see the small things don't need to be undervalued. That's awesome. Ooh, that sounds nice too. So guys, what are 3 things that you're grateful for right now in this moment? I know I say it every time, but it's true. I'm really grateful for you guys. I'm super grateful for Twitch, for this technology existing where we can connect like this. Like, what? I'm grateful for the raids today. Thank you. You're helping us grow each and every time you do that. Yeah, I could go on, and I normally do. Yes, in an age where I can find and talk to friends from all across the globe from the safety of my own home. Amen. Yes, exactly, SS. That's how I feel. It's pretty incredible, isn't it? Yes. So when I do this every day, and I will go on until I feel satisfied, and that usually means I start to actually feel warmth spread through my chest, so some sort of appreciation emotion happens. Oh, wow. SS. Man, close friends are super important to our well-being. I'm so glad you found a bunch that feels like a kindred group. That's amazing. Yes, because you've digested your food enough. Dernet's work, Philip. I'm so honored you're here, for sure. And that you put that as number 2 is really special for me. Thank you. Yeah, so that's the heart of our gratitude. If you want to keep the good vibes going, hopefully throughout your day or evening, whichever part of the day you're at, the next thing to do would be like, what 3 things could you do before you go to bed that would make your day really great? So again, this is stuff that you have control over, because then it's more likely to happen and benefit you and boost your well-being. So for me, that will be, I'm sorry. I just remembered what happened to me right before I started streaming, where my dog jumped up on the bidet and went whoosh, and launched the bidet everywhere. Apparently that made my day great, because it was hilarious, even though I was also very upset and had to clean stuff. Yeah, it was insane. I did not think that was possible, because he had to like turn it with both his paws. I don't know how it happened. So yeah, that crazy enough made my day really great. That's done. Check. Streaming, of course. I'm gonna spend some time with my mom, and that'll be really great. And yeah, I guess that's my 3 things. Yeah. So one of the crazy things about our brain is that we have a negativity bias. So we tend to remember stuff that sucks much more easily than stuff that doesn't suck or stuff that's really good. And that makes sense in terms of survival. Because we have to avoid the dangerous stuff, the painful stuff in order to survive. We don't have to avoid the good stuff. So our brain prioritizes what we remember. That sucks though, because we tend to have a skewed viewpoint of the stuff in our lives, like just how good our lives actually are. So gratitude is a real easy way to remind ourselves that we actually have a lot that's going on in our lives that is great. Yeah. Ooh, start a new book. Ooh. What kind of exercise do you want to do? I love that you're like doing it for tomorrow, so you must be near bed or something. Or you're just really excited about tomorrow. And of course, the last part of our little gratitude practice is to set an intention for today. And that's simply, you guys, to increase the awareness of our brain, right? Like to plant a seed that will like keep triggering our consciousness to be aware of what's going on in here. Oh, build muscle. That sounds exciting. Well, let me know how that goes. And if you want any support around having a routine around it, I'm happy to help. And dude, Mr. Scott Evans is like the king of effective short workouts. So if you're really busy and you can't like do a lot, he's a really good person to talk to. And he does like, I think he still does like short bursts of it throughout his day or whatever, but always impressed by how he pulls off fitness. All right, guys. Yeah, any of that body weight stuff, like using your body weight as your resistance or your weight is crazy. Yeah, I definitely do push-ups right now on my knees. For sure. Ah, there's Fat Scott! My favorite emote ever. So, you know, he's changed a lot, quantity, from that. All right, I'm boosting up our, Okay, I'm gonna boost up our meditation, you guys. We're gonna do 5 minutes. We do love Scott, don't we? He's the most lovable troll that I have in my life. He's a, you know, down in there is a good-hearted troll. It's so true. Yeah, did we all draw Scott when we were drawing our goblins? Did we all name them Scott? We might have if we've been around you long enough. Yeah, exactly, Quantity. Exactly.